They told you Muslims only brought war, but in truth, they brought knowledge the West still uses. In the year 1017, a man stood alone on a mountain in India with nothing but a wooden staff, a length of rope, and an unshakable belief that the universe could be understood. A man who discovered gravity 700 years before Newton. What he did next wouldn't be replicated in Europe for another 500 years. Using only medieval tools and pure mathematics, he calculated the circumference of the Earth, and he was accurate to within 200 kilometers. His name was Abu Rayhan al-Biruni, and this is the story of perhaps the greatest mind you've never heard of. Before we continue, kindly subscribe to this channel and join our growing family. We give you the most incredible true stories from our blessed history. We work incredibly hard to bring you this authentic stories that will strengthen your faith and fill your heart with awe. So please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because you do not want to miss what comes next.
September 973. A child is born in Kath, a bustling trade city on the Silk Road in the region of Khwarazm. His parents name him Abu Rayhan Muhammad ibn Ahmad al-Biruni. We know almost nothing about his parents. What we do know is that somehow, impossibly, this boy gained access to one of the great libraries of the Islamic world. By the age of 17, al-Biruni had already made his first major scientific discovery. He calculated the latitude of Kath using sophisticated mathematical techniques. He was 17 years old. Let that sink in. While European scholars were still arguing over basic arithmetic, a teenager in Central Asia was solving complex trigonometric problems. But al-Biruni's life was about to be shattered. In 995, civil war erupted in Khwarazm. At 22 years old, al-Biruni was forced to flee his homeland. He would spend the next decade wandering, a refugee, a scholar without a home. Iran, Tabaristan, Gurgen. He moved from court to court, offering his services to whoever would provide him with one thing: access to knowledge. And during these years of exile, he never stopped working. He studied mathematics, astronomy, physics, geography, medicine, history, languages. But there was one subject that obsessed him above all others: the shape and size of the Earth itself. In 1017, al-Biruni found himself in the court of Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni, in what is now Afghanistan. Mahmud was a conqueror, a warrior who led brutal campaigns into India. Al-Biruni accompanied these invasions, not as a soldier, but as a seeker, and what he observed would change everything. Standing on a mountain peak, al-Biruni asked himself a question: if I can measure the angle between this horizon and the vertical, could I calculate the circumference of the entire Earth? The problem was ancient. Greek mathematicians had attempted it centuries before, but their methods required traveling vast distances, measuring carefully between two cities with precision instruments. Al-Biruni realized something no one else had. You didn't need two cities. You didn't need to travel anywhere. You only needed a mountain and mathematics. Here's how it worked. First, al-Biruni measured the height of the mountain using trigonometry, measuring angles from the base to the peak. Then, standing at the summit, he measured the angle between the vertical and the horizon line where the Earth curves away. With just these two measurements and some brilliant mathematics, he could calculate the Earth's radius. And from the radius, the circumference. His answer? 40,248 kilometers. The actual circumference of Earth. 40,075 kilometers. He calculated Earth's circumference within 1% accuracy, without satellites, without telescopes, just with mathematics and mountains. But here's what's even more remarkable. This wasn't a lucky guess. Al-Biruni showed his work. Every step of his reasoning, every mathematical proof, was carefully documented. He didn't just measure the Earth. He explained exactly how anyone could verify his findings. This was science in its purest form. He knew the Earth rotates in 11th century when many believed the Earth was still. He wrote about Earth's axial rotation and planetary motion at a time when Europe still thought Earth was flat. But measuring the Earth was just the beginning. Over his lifetime, al-Biruni would write over 146 books on virtually every subject known to medieval science. He explained how springs and wells worked, understanding hydrostatic pressure centuries before European scientists. He described the concept of specific gravity with precision. Long before Newton's apple fell, al-Biruni wrote, "Objects fall because they are drawn to the center of the Earth." He even measured gravity using water and balance. But he really wasn't given any credit. He documented the latitude and longitude of hundreds of cities. He studied earthquakes and theorized about their causes. He investigated minerals and precious stones, creating one of the first systematic works on mineralogy. In astronomy, he calculated the Earth's axial tilt and the length of the solar year with stunning accuracy. He discussed, 600 years before Galileo, the possibility that the Earth rotated on its axis. And then there was India. Al-Biruni spent years in India, and unlike other visitors, he didn't just observe from a distance. He learned Sanskrit. He studied Hindu and Buddhist philosophy. He translated Indian mathematical and astronomical texts into Arabic. His masterwork on India, the Kitab al-Hind, is over 1,000 pages long. But what makes it revolutionary isn't its length. It's his approach. At a time when most scholars dismissed foreign cultures as inferior, al-Biruni wrote with respect, curiosity, and scientific objectivity. He documented Indian culture, religion, philosophy, and science without mockery or prejudice. He compared Islamic and Indian astronomy, mathematics, and philosophy, always seeking the truth regardless of where it came from. He criticized his own culture when he felt they were wrong, and praised Indian scholars when they were right. In many ways, al-Biruni created the framework for anthropology, for comparative religion, for cross-cultural scientific dialogue. He was doing in the 11th century what we struggle to do today, seeking truth across cultural boundaries. But there's one more field where al-Biruni's genius shines, and it's perhaps the most surprising: pharmacology. His work, Kitab al-Saydana, documented over 720 drugs and their uses. He described their preparation, their effects, their origins. He insisted on precision in dosage and purity of ingredients. 800 years before the FDA, al-Biruni was advocating for standardized, evidence-based medicine. But genius, especially in turbulent times, comes at a price. Al-Biruni lived through wars, invasions, political upheavals. He served under Sultan Mahmud of Ghazni, a brilliant but brutal ruler who destroyed libraries, killed scholars, and forced intellectuals into service. There's a story, perhaps apocryphal, that when Mahmud asked al-Biruni to dedicate his astronomical work to him, al-Biruni hesitated. His loyalty was to truth, not to power. Eventually, he agreed. He had no choice. The alternative was death, or worse, the inability to continue his work. When Mahmud offered him gold for the dedication, al-Biruni refused it. Another scholar, jealous of al-Biruni's favor, later had the money secretly placed in his belongings. When al-Biruni discovered it, he gave it all away to the poor. He wasn't interested in wealth. He was interested in one thing only: understanding the universe. And he worked until the very end. Legend says that on his deathbed, friends came to visit him. Even then, weak and dying, al-Biruni asked them a question about Islamic inheritance law. His friends protested. "Must you concern yourself with this now?" they asked. Al-Biruni replied, "I would like to meet my maker knowing the answer to this question rather than not." He died in 1048, around the age of 75. After a lifetime spanning 3/4 of a century, after writing more than 13,000 folios of text, after contributions to every field of medieval science, the world forgot him. For centuries, al-Biruni's name was known only to specialists. His books were copied, yes, but often without attribution. His methods were used, but the man himself faded from memory. When the Mongols swept through Central Asia in the 13th century, they destroyed countless libraries. Thousands of al-Biruni's manuscripts were lost forever. Later, when European scientists made discoveries centuries after al-Biruni, they had no idea they were walking in his footsteps. The scientific revolution they celebrated had roots they never knew existed. But here's what we need to understand. Al-Biruni wasn't forgotten because he was unimportant. He was forgotten because of where and when he lived. Because history is written by the powerful, and the powerful were elsewhere. It's only in the last century that scholars have begun to truly appreciate the magnitude of his achievements. Only recently that we've understood how much he knew, how far ahead of his time he truly was. Today, there's a crater on the moon named after him. Universities across Central Asia bear his name. Scholars call him the first anthropologist, the father of geodesy, one of the greatest scientists of the medieval world. But perhaps the best tribute we can give al-Biruni is the simplest one. We can remember what he showed us. That curiosity transcends culture. That truth is universal. That one person, with nothing but determination, intelligence, and an unshakable commitment to understanding the world, can see further than armies, outlast empires, and touch the infinite. In 1017, on a mountain in India, a man measured the earth with medieval tools and was accurate to within 200 kilometers. Not because he was lucky, not because he guessed, but because he understood that the universe follows laws, that those laws can be discovered, and that no question is too grand to ask. Abu Rayhan al-Biruni, scholar, scientist, polymath, one of the greatest minds in human history, and the man who measured the earth.